they're able where they're able to get connections. But absolutely contact a local animal control officer as well. Even if the animal, was found by a good Samaritan who brings it to you, at least letting the local ACO know if somebody is out there looking for it, that you have it, is a help. And microchipping the animals that you adopt out. And we have some tips for the microchips that we use that are really inexpensive. You don't need to put the animal under anesthesia to do it if you have somebody who knows what they're doing. And that will hopefully reunite lost animals with their owners faster and more directly.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Why don't we hop on over to Erin? You can give us your background again and maybe how you got involved with reptiles and then give us your tips.
So my name is Aaron Mosesian. I'm the adoption coordinator for the New England Herpetological Society. I'm also the animal control officer for the towns of Holbrook and Avon, Massachusetts. The New England Herpetological Society is a group of reptile and amphibian enthusiasts. Basically, our goal as a society is for education, conservation, advancements in herpetology. The Herpetological Society has been around since 1972. We are a nonprofit organization, and I've been the adoption coordinator since 1998. So we take in annually anywhere between 200 to 350 animals, reptiles, and amphibians each year. Most of them are adopted back out. We do most of what we do is provide homes for reptiles and amphibians, or help people find homes for reptiles and amphibians that they no longer can take care of. So it's mostly pets. We deal with things you find in the pet trade. Very, very small percentage of the things we deal with are native. Excuse me. So yeah, and as far as tips go, as far as trying to find a lost reptile. Obviously, reptiles are a little different than most of our furry friends. But most people, when they call me and they've lost their reptile, it's usually in the house. So if you've lost your reptile in the house, the best thing to do, assuming it's a smaller animal and can fit under the most common things, best place to look for critters are the warm places in your house. For example, you're under your refrigerator. You got the motor and the compressor going on in there. They're gonna go to that area. You're also gonna be able to find them, near hot water pipes. Obviously in the winter, near radiator, baseboard heat, things of that nature. If you are the type of person that lets their reptile, you set some sort of makeshift enclosure up outside during the warmer months, and you lose your reptile that way. Obviously, it's a lot more challenging. But in my experience, most reptiles do go to towards the foundations, towards rock walls, fence lines, things of that nature. Under shrubs. So specifically for iguanas, one thing I like to do is I like to wait till nighttime. I use a flashlight, bright flashlight, look up in the trees. You can usually see their eyes glowing, and that's the best way to find an iguana, because they're kind of sleeping at that point. Reptiles don't travel that far, and like Vanessa said, one of the best things you can do is let your animal control officer know, let the police know, let your neighbors know. Mainly the police, because first thing somebody does when they see a snake in the wild is they call the police. So that's usually the best thing to do. You can always find a lot of the reptiles, just like our native reptiles. You find them in the morning basking in sunny spots. So if you've lost a reptile, that's a good spot to find. You go out in the morning. You can also Google what type of habitat that specific animal is from, what they like, and maybe you have some sort of habitat like that in your yard. You can try to find them in that area as well. But they don't travel very far, so I have been able to help people track down their critters and reunite them as well. So that's I think that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very
Sheila,
welcome.
let's jump to you with your top tips.
Hi, my name is Sheila, and I am part of Heart of Feathers and Behavior Consultants, and just recently have been added to the Director of Educations at Rhode Island Rescue, which has been wonderful. And I'm very honored for being here and talking about this topic because lost birds do happen a lot. There's probably a lost bird, from what I can tell, averagely maybe about 4 a day. We're just talking US wide. It happens, and accidents happen. And birds who are flighted can get drift and they can fly. And usually the first time they have this lift, I just want to tell people that just depending on the bird, they've been in a house and contained, so they're not going to go as far as we think they're going to go. Usually it's the wind that takes them, or drafts that take them further out. And then if they'll land, that's the time to go. When the person loses, they should go look for it before the sun goes down, because just like everybody has said, when the sun goes down, they're going to roost. And they'll stay there unless they're scared by an owl or something, and they'll move again. And so just on the first topic real quickly is when a person loses their bird, I tell them, try to it's hard because you're panicking, focus on what direction that bird went and follow it. Try not to scream or anything, just follow it until it lands so that you can focus on where it lands. Sometimes we get panicky, happens to the best of us. We run, we start screaming, and we either lose focus of what direction the bird went, or the bird panics again and moves. So we've got to kind of run. Keep your cell phone with you. If you can't, you got to run back in the house to get something. Put a marker, something to tell you what direction to go, because you may have to run back in the house and get things. For us who receive a lost bird, my tips are: one, check for a microchip. I'm kind of promoting, like all of us, microchipping birds. It can happen, it can be done. I don't think we think about it because it's probably right now a very small percentage of birds that are microchipped, but I'm trying to promote we should be microchipping. There are bands. The bands may not get you to the owner. They may get you to the breeder, but not to the owner, and the breeder may not know. But that band is going to become important when you're trying to connect with the owner, because the owner should have written it down or has some note about what the band numbers are. Don't advertise the band numbers anywhere. That's going to be kind of your code. If the bird has a band number, don't advertise it. Save it to when the owners connect. When the person does come in with the found bird, I always ask, where is the exact location they found the bird? Right? If it landed on them, I want to know the address. If they found it somewhere, where exactly? Not where they brought it home. Where was the bird found? Because you need that radius to start to figure out what location maybe the bird was. Okay, and then when it's brought to you, you're now in a different location, right? So the person who's lost the bird may not be thinking it ended up at your location. They may have thought it might to animal control or somebody else. So it's always important to know the location of that bird. And then this is the big thing. There is on social media, there's something called Parrot 911. It's on Facebook, and people do post their birds up on it, and they have a nice little printout, and they print it out. So if you know the date that the person found the bird and the location they found, you're going to have to get a map and start doing this, what I call 5-mile radius. It may really just be 1 mile, but I always tell people go 5 miles out and start looking at pictures of the bird and the bird. Once you know the date, because this website is not real easy searchable, you're going to have to skim past certain, because you'll have to say, well, it can't be this date. And then you start to look. After Parrot 911, I would go to Craigslist and look. because sometimes people don't know where to post on, they may not have a Facebook account, so they will do this. So scroll through that, and then again, in that 5 mile radius, call the police, call animal control, call vets, call pet stores, to let them know. And why I say pet store too is because somebody might come into the pet store going, oh, I found this bird, how do I feed it? And now you've got, oh, all right, you had somebody come in, all right, we got it, maybe we can find this person again and figure out. Because when people find a bird, they don't know what to do, and they keep it hoping that a flyer shows up. So they're trying to do the right thing, but at some point the bird comes to you. So those, that's the big race, yes. But for you, once you've found it and you've checked these things, if you could put it on, if you can get it, use Parrot 911 has a nice format. If you can take a picture, use it, and post it, up on their page as well to say you have this bird, because that's where people are going to look. That would be great. And if possible, if you do get the bird in, if possible, can you try to do an avian check, or if the bird passes, and I'm sorry, sometimes this happens, keep the bird. I know nobody wants it for that long, but just for a little while, so you have a picture of it and some stuff in case the owner does come. You can solve these things. If you do find a connection, the person says, oh yes, it's my bird, have them bring photos. If it's a bonded bird, have them bring the other bird, right? Because you'll know, bring them in a quiet spot, you'll know when because the other bird will know that bird. They'll talk to each other. It might take a little while, but they might know. Any other identifying things. And I know I'm going along, but again, my 2 big points is if you could keep a lost and found book on hand. So when people come in with flyers, you can put it in this book, and when a bird's found, you can, and okay, so you have to keep this book. I know it's annoying and it's right there. And I'd keep the pages for about 6 to 9 months, because it's really odd. Birds show up all of a sudden, and you can at least match. And birds do look when we look them by the eye, they look very similar. I always joke, one cockatiel looks like another cockatiel. But when you have a picture of it and you're looking, you'll start to see different markers, and you'll say, okay, that's different. And the other part I'm going to ask again to all is, I believe, and I was doing some research, a lot of places like us have like a 7-day hold. The owner's not found in 7 days, we put it up for adoption. If we can stretch it out to 14 to 21, because again, the person may not even, you may be in a totally different radius than where this person's looking. And so if we can give them a little more time to match up, and we do the social media, we may be able to do this. With myself, for what I've been doing, and there's a lot of groups that have been doing this, the ratio right now is about 10% that they've matched up, because birds escape, they're in different radiuses, they really try. But I'm hoping with the promotion of microchipping, we can increase this, because I've heard from 2 rescues out in California who microchip all their birds, and if it's lost, they've got 100%. They find if the bird is found, they can get it back to the owner. So that's my thoughts on that. I'm sorry I went long, but I hope that helps.
Information. Thank you so much, Sheila. Okay, Suzanne, we'll turn it over to you.
Hello, I'm Suzanne with the House Rabbit Network. We are a rabbit rescue based out of Westford, Massachusetts, and we average placing about 400 rabbits a year, spayed or neutered, into good indoor homes. One statistic I can tell you is last year we took in 56 stray rabbits, and it's actually probably more than that, because we take in bunnies from ACOs, but they're tracked on our records as coming from the ACOs, but I'd say at least half the ACO bunnies, if not more, are also stray bunnies. So that would add probably another 20. A big problem we have is that because people see wild bunnies outside, they think they can just set their bunny free when they don't want it anymore. It's very rare for us to reunite a rabbit with an owner, because the vast majority of the ones we kept that we find were deliberately set free. And it's pretty obvious if you find them in a park and stuff like that. Bunnies, there are some owners that do have bunnies that live outside. and the bunnies can escape from their pens. Half those owners don't like, I mean, I've been doing this like over 25 years, and I think we've reunited 2 or 3 bunnies in 3 years time, 25 years time. So it's not very many. And in those cases, the bunnies, they don't travel far. You're generally going to find a bunny, you know, in less than a quarter mile from the house. They're not going to go wander the way dogs and cats do. They stay pretty local. If somebody is missing their bunny, well, for one thing is like, if it's normally an indoor bunny, I would agree with the hurt person that you want to look inside the house. I've had frantic phone calls from people thinking their bunny escaped from the house. They couldn't find them. In one case, a bunny pushed through a door that closed behind it, like a closet door. And so they eventually looked in the closet. And there was another case where the person had a, you know, those, I don't know what you call them, that they hang in the closet, and you know, it's like a little box thing, a fabric box that you put clothes in to kind of protect them more, like a garment bag, an oversized square garment bag type thing. The bunny had somehow jumped in there and couldn't get out. So if it's an indoor bunny, I would be searching the house high and low, looking inside, because the bunny could be trapped someplace. If the bunny is outside, even the couple of cases where we reunited the bunny with the owners weren't looking very hard for the bunny. They seemed to like, oh yeah, the bunny's out, you know. But if somebody is looking for a bunny that it got out, the main recommendations I would do is set up a feeding station, because they do like their pellets, they do like their food, and they do tend to have like a home base. So if you set up a feeding area that you can monitor, you will see the bunny coming back to the feeding area and trying to get food. You're also more likely to see them at dusk and dawn, early in the day, later in the day. They're crepuscular, so which means active at dusk and dawn. So you see them more during those times of the day. If you're going to try to capture them outside, so I would put out a feeding area to get them used to coming to the area. But then there's some tools we use. We take like 3 or 4 exercise pens, and you could set them up into a U shape. And then what we try to do is like gently chase, like encourage the bunny to walk into the pen, and then you can just close the pen shut. And then once you have it closed shut, you can make it smaller and smaller and smaller until you can pick up the bunny. So that works very well for that. And we also bring other tools with us, like long sticks, because sometimes a bunny will just go hang out underneath the car and they're just laughing at you. You can't get, you know, so, but if you have a long like broomstick or something like that, you can kind of encourage them to leave from underneath the car. And also we bring some very small pens or fencing, so you can block off things that they might try to scurry under, like they might be scurrying underneath a shed or something like that. So if you have little things you can do to block the shed off, that makes it easier to capture them, because they can't go hide on you like that. So those are some tips for trying to capture a bunny, and that's mostly for capturing strays. But we get calls. I mean, we see stuff online. There are actually Facebook groups out there for trying to capture stray bunnies, and the people go out and do it. And it is a little bit, you know, figuring out what's working and what's not working. They go out morning and night typically. Every now and then you'll see one in the afternoon, but for the most part, it's, you know, people go out in the evenings or early morning. We're always a bit hesitant to post online, because you unfortunately also, like you said, you want to make sure, see if they have pictures and stuff like that. You have to be careful with rabbits, because there are snake owners that are looking for snake food, and you want to make sure that somebody's not trying to get a free meal, stuff like that. So that sadly is a problem that we have. But they generally stay in the area. Rabbits are not really microchipped yet. There's a few areas of the country where they are, but a lot of areas are not. It's starting to be a bigger thing in some states, like for example, Connecticut. There's now like the RHD vaccine, and the bunnies must be microchipped to get the vaccine. The flip side is the owners that are vaccinating their bunnies are much less likely to have their bunny lost and outside. But you know, there's not that many that are microchipped at the moment, but it varies from area of the country. I don't think it's very common in Massachusetts yet. Maybe it will be someday. And I think those are my main tips. I'm trying to figure out what I forgot. So
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. So Sheila, you had mentioned microchipping for the birds, and we actually have a question in the comments asking where the microchips are usually placed in a bird and where on the body they should scan specifically to catch that chip.
Look, I got perfect bird. Usually it's in the breast muscle, in the fatty part of the breast muscle, and that would be where they scan. That's usually where the avian vet who can do it will put it in that area. If that helps, I wanted to use a little demonstration.
That's perfect.
I've had my birds microchipped. There's been no ill effect from it. And when I go to my bring them in for their annual, I have them double check. No, and there's no issues. They find it, the thing beeps. And I like it because one of my birds came from another rescue and it has my name and the rescue on it. So when it beeps, if they couldn't get in touch with me, they can get in touch with the rescue.
Okay.
If that helps.
And is there a certain type of microchip, do you know, that is used? Do they use the
I think
the
they
mini
use
chips?
I think they use the mini chips. And there are some avian vets who do it. And if you, sorry, a little comment there, and I can, Crystal, I can get you information about it, okay? And how to do it, because I believe if an avian vet, it doesn't have to be a board director, even though that would be better, avian vet, I think they can teach people how to do it, and they don't always have to, some people like their birds, I'm using the wrong word, not to sleep, rested when they put the microchip in, because the needle is big, you know,
Right.
so, but it can be,
Underestimate it.
yeah, thank you. I was going to use the wrong word. But other vets can do it really quick. Bang, done. Bird doesn't even know.
Excellent.
So I wanted to share what I use for microchips for the ferrets, and it's called nano chip. Hopefully everybody can see this. It's a teeny tiny little chip. Comes in this great little package with the application. Also on the back, it's like half dozen little stickers that you can put on paperwork and stuff. They're really cheap. I know a lot of shelters are using Home Again or this or that. These things are $40 for a box of 10, free shipping. Though what I like about them is the shelter can always be registered for free as a secondary owner. So I don't feel like I have to sell to somebody, oh, we've microchipped, but you have to pay X number of dollars every year to keep that registration up. As long as I have the chip number and the animal gets tracked back to me, I can track the owner. Also, as a nice little benefit to that, if somebody takes your pet that you've adopted out and abandoned it someplace else and they scan it, you can know that that adopter did that, which kind of is not such a fun thing. Again, it's small, so a really experienced vet tech can do this on their own without putting the animal under anesthesia. It will be scanned with, I mean, I use a $30 universal scanner. We'll scan it. They also have a nice little downloadable form that you can print out to put the ID number and information about the animals. The adopter is able to register themselves if they want. It'll cost them $20 a year, but they don't have to. And to me, that's a real benefit. And again, the cost of them at $4 a piece, that's super cheap. And you can just roll that into the cost of your adoption. So that animal has protection. Another thing I kind of wanted to share about finding lost pets, and this is if you found one or if you've lost one, there is a site called pawboost.com that for free will let you post and download a little flyer with a picture of the pet. They will share it on their social media sites, and they tend to have one for like every area. It'll say Lost Pets Connecticut, et cetera, et cetera. And then once it's on one site, it's super simple to share them across other sites. Definitely, I would say for a shelter or a vet that's taken in a found bunny or a found ferret, reach out to the local shelter because the owners will often be reaching out to us as well. Paw Boost does have some limitations. My vet actually lost her ferret, and because she was 10 miles away, I didn't get the notification, even though I'm the only ferret shelter in Connecticut. But last week I got one from someone locally who found a ferret. So we were able to take that in. Those social media contacts are great. There are some lovely people out there who seem to spend their entire lives on Facebook sharing lost and found pets. Bless them. I think they do this just out of the goodness of their heart. Any of whatever state you're in is probably going to have a Vermont lost pets or Connecticut lost pets. And again, sharing back and forth, sharing on or keeping an eye on the town website. I mean, for me in Hartford, it's not really going to work, but for a small town, say Enfield or Southington, someone might post that their ferret's found there or their bunny was lost there. Also, nextdoor.com, people will post there. I find Nextdoor to be kind of a pain in the neck because people, unfortunately, if somebody's going to post found bunny, please put found bunny in your title. Don't put, oh, hello, I found this, because by the time you get to the bunny part, people have already scrolled past it. So those are some of the tips that I would have. Craigslist, yeah, I see a lot less people posting found and lost animals there than I do on Nextdoor.
Great. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Sheila, I had a question myself. Do you have any recommendations for if someone has a bird that is like maybe just coming back to their deck or their windowsill consistently? Do you have any suggestions on how they could catch that bird that keeps, coming back saying basically help me, but won't exactly perch on their finger like Snow White?
Yeah. And there's multiple ways, and that's a great question. Because if it's returning to a certain point, it's looking for food. So I tell people if they can get a cage, if possible, with a big door, right? Not a little tiny door. It's got to be a big door. Start to put, depending on what the bird is. Usually I always tell people start with millet because usually that's the candy for a lot of the birds. And put it on the top of the cage and around the cage. So the bird starts going to the cage and then the millet can move into the cage. And as the bird moves into the cage, this is the tricky part. And I've had some people do this. I was about it. They had dental floss on the door and they slid it into a window, right? So it was, and they waited for the bird to go in and then they pulled the dental floss to close the door. That I had to say that was pretty impressive.
The old thud method, right?
Yeah,
just like getting bugs with the box. I've used that method for rabbits actually in Lowell.
So maybe we need to promote dental floss as more than just clean your teeth because it seems to work. This also, if the bird is up, sometimes the birds will go up into a tree and we think they know how to come down, but they're scared. That's not always necessarily the place they want to come because it's safer up. So again, back to being Bugs Bunny and stuff, sometimes you've got to get the cage up into an area, and if you have to build something or get it up there without scaring the bird, this is always the problem. You have to it in such a way so that the bird can angle into it, and you just stuff it with you just stuff it. You know, I always, sometimes you've got to really do it. And Chris, I'm gonna use this other thing because this does happen on occasions where the bird is up in a tree, the owner has found it, but the bird, you know, here's the owner trying to call the bird down, and the bird's up in the tree. And I tell people sometimes you might have to back off a little. Like now the bird sees you, and and the bird goes, okay, there you are, but I don't know how to get to you. And sometimes you have to back away. So the bird calls for you to come back, and it sort of starts to move. You both mutually start to move, you back away because the bird wants to get to the owner. And then you can start to see if you can get a ladder and try to move things and help the bird and the owner move. But the owner has to back away a little bit or come back. Or if this has a bonded other bird, sometimes like parakeets come in two and one got out, but the other one is still in the cage. If you can latch it, you know, bring the cage out, but latch it up so that other bird doesn't escape, that bird will start to come to that bird. And then you can try to, you know, do things. I try to recommend not using things that would scare the bird, because a lot of people were like, well, can I use a sheet and I would say under desperation if it's getting cold and we have to, but it's a one-time shot. You have to plan it because once you do it and the bird knows that sheet, it's not coming back. So you've got to plan things accordingly. But if you can do it, if you have time and plan it, you can get the bird to come down. That I probably went long, but I hope that answered it.
No, that's a great description for people to be able to know what to pass on. Erin, I was curious, any sort of recommendations that you might have for folks that discover maybe a reptile out in the wild that you know is a house pet. And specifically what comes to mind that has come up a crazy number of times in my 16 years here at Lowell is loose iguanas. And people will often see them like, you know, lounging in the sun, but somewhere where you can't reach, like on the roof of a house or the roof of a porch. And they're like, yeah, this is not my iguana. I don't know where it came from. It's on, you know, my roof. What are your recommendations for being able to safely capture that iguana, or at least keep it, you know, keep it safe until some help can get there?
Like I said before, I like to wait until nighttime because they cool down, they go to sleep. You try to go after it while it's, you know, daylight and it's, you know, basking in the sun. It's just going to take off on you. So I like to try to keep an eye on it if you can. Wait till it, you know, I mean, it's probably not going to travel far. So if you see it on a roof, it's probably still going to be on that roof come nighttime, or climb into one of the nearby trees. And, you know, again, that's when I like to try to get to it. You know, if you can get a ladder, you know, cat carrier, ladder, anything, and get up there and get it. And I've done it a number of times. So it's not easy, but it's definitely the nighttime is the best time to get them.
Okay. Excellent.
That goes with bearded dragon. You know, now it's not so much iguanas anymore. It's now the bearded dragon. So, but yeah, so same idea.
Okay, excellent. And are there any sort of tools that you might recommend? I feel like more with like the lizards and things like that, you end up needing a tool more than necessarily with, you know, the mammals. But is there any certain type of net or something that might come in handy for catching that type of thing? Like a specific net that would be safe to use, or do you just suggest not using anything like that at all?
So with some of the iguanas, I mean, you could use, you know, like what most animal control officers have, the catch pole, the rabies pole. There's a net. I forget the name. It's the name of the net slips my mind, but the rim of the net's on it's like a cinch, and I forget the name of the net, but there's a net that once it's in there, you can slide it back and it cinches it closed like a laundry bag. And those are good. Those are good as well. That way, if somebody doesn't want to touch it, you can just put it in there and roll the net a little bit, and now it's there until you can drop it in a cat carrier or something.
Okay, perfect.
So
Excellent. Thank you so much.
one other thing I will share, if you are trying to catch a snake or something, if you don't have a snake hook, a stiff hanger will work as long as you have something with a hook. Hook it, and what you can do is you can take a 5-gallon bucket and put a pillowcase in it as if you're putting a trash bag in a wastebasket, and then you hook the snake, you drop it in there, then you grab the pillowcase and either tie a knot in it if you can, or fold it over and put some tape or a zip tie or something on there. Obviously make sure it's a cloth breathable pillowcase, but that's a nice little trick that I've shared with some other ACOs.
That's great. That's really helpful. We had a question, or no, we had a comment come through that that cage, the net that you were talking about that kind of cinches up is the Freeman cage net. And I think that it's a lot, it's basically probably what all of us shelter folks use to to catch cats, very spicy cats who get loose on us in the shelter. So if you're trying to envision what he was talking about, I think that's probably what he was referring to. But Amy shared a link there in the comments to something like that, and that's, I think, exactly what it.
I'm looking it up. I'm
about.
looking it up right now. It's actually a really cool net. I hadn't seen it until what is it called? I'm looking it up. I'll find it. I'll let you know.
Amy put a link in the comments if you want, or in the chat if you want to click on that and see if it's similar to what
it's
you were
from
talking
Ace.
about.
It's from Aces. It's I don't know.
Well, if you find that, we can always send it out to you later.
Absolutely.
Suzanne, you wanted to just make some points about wild rabbits versus domestic, because it can be confusing for people. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, we sometimes get calls that people don't realize if they don't know if a bunny is a wild bunny or a domestic bunny that they see outside. A general rule of thumb, wild bunnies are this brown fleck color, and any other color besides that brown fleck, it's almost always a domestic bunny. There are rare cases of piebald bunnies, in which case we can kind of help differentiate them, but 98% of the time, if you see a bunny that's white, that's orange, that's brown, anything but the wild bunny brown or black bunny or gray bunny, wild bunny browns are all that one consistent color, unless it's a rare piebald. So that's one way to tell it. Now the tricky part is that domestic bunnies can also be the same agouti color that the wild bunnies are. So if you have a bunny that's agouti outside, you then have to go by features. A lot of the comments a lot of times we've gotten people rescuing bunnies that they're trying to rescue a bunny that's a wild bunny and it's not that they get confused between wild bunnies, but you have to go on features if it's the wild bunny brown, and you can reach out online for people to help you with pictures, get video, anything like that you can post, and try to get good pictures, because if I can look at a picture, I could sometimes tell if it's wild or domestic, and that makes it easier for us to help determine things. But always take pictures, always take video, reach out online. There's a lot of resources online. Any color that's not that wild bunny brown is a domestic bunny.
Excellent. That's a great point for sure. I noticed too, when we've had people call our shelter about loose rabbits, the video really is the key, and watching how they move does make such a difference in the domestic versus the wild.
Yes.
So Amy had a great question. She said that recently just were part of a study in Virginia where they found that cats were typically less than 4 city blocks from home when they went missing. So do any of you have thoughts or some stats on what the general search area is, or the general radius that these animals hang out, you know, near their home when they do get loose? I know that can probably vary, you know, dependent on the situation. I know, Suzanne, you had mentioned that they stay fairly close to home for rabbits.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing scientific about this. It's just more going from experience. But I honestly think they're generally even within 10 to 15 houses. They really don't go very far. They tend to have a home base. I've never heard of a rabbit being found a half a mile from its house. Never heard of it. So they have their home bases that they live in their area. And especially if you put out a feeding station or something for your bunny, he's going to be right nearby.
Excellent. And what are the like Sheila mentioned that millet is the candy for birds. What is that like top thing you think you should put out if you are setting up a feeding station to get that those rabbits to stay close to home?
Well, even they just love their pellets. So if you put a bowl of pellets out there, and you might be able to put it in a cage that's more protected that you can try to close off to. But they love their pellets. Most bunnies love banana. But then you have to worry, like I'd worry about the flies in the summertime and stuff like that. So it's not, you could throw out a carrot even. They like their carrots. The carrots are a treat food, so you don't want to be feeding it all the time. But if you want to lure your bunny into a trap or something, I would try carrots, pellets, because
Right.
those are pretty sturdy. Try to protect it from the elements, because like if it gets rained on, obviously the pellets are going to get really mushy. So I try to have something that's kind of covered and protected, and you want them coming back to the same area.
Excellent. Thank you.
Ferrets are similar to bunnies in that they are going to try and stay fairly close. They're going to look for some place to hide, like under a porch, under a car, even in a wood pile or a rock pile. But I have heard of a ferret traveling like a mile or so plus out in a wooded area. It just kind of runs wild. But the nice thing is you don't usually have to try and catch them because they will see a human and come running right up to you going, help me.
Yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
point. I think we find that with cats and dogs as well, where they, you know, cats especially will stay fairly close to home unless maybe they get chased or they get startled and they go into that, you know, mentality of, you know, trying to save themselves, and they take off and, you know, may get further from home for sure. Okay.
Yeah, it's tough to say with, I was just gonna say with birds, because of it depends on the bird and their ability to fly. And so it has been posted, you know, that there's been a parakeet that's 40 miles away. But I always feel like in the first, let's call it the first 24 or 48 hours, we're going to say, not the majority, but we'll just say the average stays within a 5 mile radius. But again, weather, scare and all that can pull them out of that area. But I'm just talking within that 24, 48 hours. After that, it could go a long way, or it could stay within that range.
Yeah, and I'll take a minute to ask if you have any other questions. Where, you know, we're getting to the end here. Please go ahead and put your questions in the comments. Aaron just messaged me that the net that he was referring to for catching those lizards is the Versa net from Aces. So you can take a look at that if you want to add that to your resources to have on hand. I will also, just as a general blanket reminder for Lost and Found, because this is one of my areas that I get really obsessed with, is to remember that they, you know, encourage owners who are looking for their lost pet. And if you have a found pet, encourage your team to like put that net far and wide to look for the owners, because sometimes they get picked up by someone and brought to far off lands and end up in a shelter far away from where they were even found. I moments ago got a text message from an animal control officer in a neighboring town. Someone found a cat in the town our shelter is in and brought it to 2 towns over. So I wouldn't have looked there for this cat that went missing on the opposite direction of town. So make sure that you are, checking with lots of other organizations for any lost and found reports, because they may have been displaced as well. Does anyone have any parting comments or last bits of information they feel like we have to share today before we sign off?
I was going to just comment, for those that live in Connecticut, it's mostly Connecticut, but it can affect Mass and Rhode Island. There are these parrots called Quaker parrots. They're green and gray. They're about so big. I was trying to look for a photo for you guys. But they have wild habitats in these areas. And sometimes people get confused that the wild habitat birds, these are, I don't want to say, they're called invasive species. I don't like calling them that. They've become native. But people think, oh, that's a bird that's lost, and it really may be part of that flock of things. So just if you happen to get a Quaker, they're illegal in Connecticut, but it happens. People find them, they'll bring them to rescues. That's why it's important to find out about the location. And Crystal, and everybody, I can try to send you, there is a site for where the wild Quaker birds live. And so if that bird was found in that location, there's a chance it really is a wild Quaker. It's a rarity, but they do, it does come up. I think there's just off the top of my head, I believe there's a small wild nest in Gloucester, Mass. There's a small group there.
Oh, wow. Yeah, if any of your speakers today have links or resources you'd like to share, just shoot them over in an email, as soon as we're done here, and I'll add them to the meeting notes that go out after the meeting for everyone.
Yeah, if I could just add, if anybody would like to use me as a resource, I'm happy to help identify an animal, let you know whether it's native or a domestic animal, reptile. And if somebody contacts you with a reptile or amphibian or something of that sort that you guys can't take in, please feel free to give them my email or my cell phone, and I'm happy to help people out any way I can.
I will attest to that. Aaron has received many a text message from me saying, what is this? Is it native? What do I do with it? And he guides me along.
And if I can add something too, because we get people reach out to us all the time about wild rabbits. We can take in domestic, but we are not licensed most shelters are not licensed for wildlife. So they need to go to wildlife rehabbers, and we try to keep some rehabber lists on hand, but it can really vary, but depending upon where the person lives. And it's important to find a licensed rehabber if somebody reaches out to us about a wild bunny. Like sometimes it's a disturbed nest or they have a baby or something like that. And we unfortunately are not licensed to do anything, and we don't want to get in trouble, but we can refer.
That's a great point. I know Massachusetts has a great list right on the state website, but I'm not sure about other states if they have that same resource.
Connecticut does. It tends to be a little out of date. Sometimes if you know somebody who's in the wildlife rehab world, they can give you better connections. Along with what Suzanne's saying about the wild rabbits, usually once a year, I will get a phone call from some very excited person who says, there's a family of wild ferrets in my backyard. And I ask them what color. Well, they're like a really black or brown, and are they all very solid color? Yeah, do you have water anywhere near there? Yeah, there's a little stream. Well, those are mink. And yes, they are wild. They are all over the place, and they belong to stay in the wild. Should one be come in that's an infant, looks like an orphaned infant, again, yeah, it needs to go to a wildlife rehabilitator.
Yeah, we've had a few baby fishers come in with people thinking that they are baby ferrets or full-grown ferrets, because they're so big when they're babies. And we said, yikes, put it back.
Yeah, this year we almost ended up with a pair of long-tailed weasels. until I got the photograph from the finder and said, oh, no, 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 we can't take that. Sorry.
Yeah. Another thing to point out, so speaking of the ferrets and wildlife confusion is ermines. I'm not sure if they're down in Connecticut, but I know in New Hampshire where I live and in Massachusetts, certain areas, ermines go snow white when you're getting into the colder weather. And one of my staff actually just assisted in a ferret rescue up in southern New Hampshire with, there was a lot of that Facebook chatter going on back and forth about whether it was an ermine or a ferret, and it was a ferret. And they, a group of people went up and were able to catch it, but he was in really rough shape, so he was lucky somebody got a hold of him. And it was not an ermine, it was a ferret. So it can be confusing for sure with some of those.
Well, it is. A mink is very similarly sized to a ferret, and a weasel, which would be the summer coat of an ermine, looks like a small ferret. I mean, they got that same sort of body shape. So yeah, it's easy to get confused. And people want to help them, which is wonderful.
Yeah. All right, well, we can go ahead and wrap things up now. I want to thank all of you again so much for participating today and sharing your expertise, because these are definitely areas where we're seeing more and more of these animals coming into our shelters, and we want to make sure that we have the resources that we need to provide for them. I want to remind everyone about our amazing merch on our merch shop on our website, and also about our conference that's coming up March 24th through 26th, 2025, next year. And it'll be right in Burlington, Mass. So it's a pretty centralized location for New England. And we hope that we'll see a lot of people. And again, we will be releasing the schedule in the coming months. So stay tuned for that. And also, if you're thinking that you might need some assistance to get some of your team to the conference, we have scholarship options available. So keep an eye on the website for when scholarship opportunities open up. We like to try and give as many people the opportunity to attend as possible. And we know that sometimes the budget can be tight for that type of thing. So definitely have your staff sign up for a scholarship if needed. And thank you again, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.